This podcast is brought to you by Infinite Resources, a local staffing agency connecting diverse job candidates in central Iowa companies.
I'm your host, Abena Sankofa Imhotep, and welcome back to Black and Privileged in America podcast. Catch Black and Privileged in America podcast on SoundCloud and on our very own platform, amplifieddsm.com. And please follow us on our Facebook page. Today, we are sitting with the esteemed founder and publisher of Black Iowa News. I'm so thrilled to have Dana James in our space today. We're going to talk about Black Iowa News, its origins, the goals for this publication, and current events. So please welcome Dana James.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I'm glad you're here. This is an honor. This is amazing. So congratulations on Black Iowa News. You're in your second issue now.
I am. It's been quite the journey.
Can we talk about that? The journey. Yeah. Go for it. What made you do this? Because this is dope.
Thank you so much. It's a lot of things. So number one, it is the recognition that when you look at media around here, you don't always see us, and our stories aren't always told accurately. So back up to the pandemic, I'm trying to stay safe. I'm trying to keep my family safe. And I was out of journalism for a while, and I'm, reading the news, watching the news, and they never really speak to how the pandemic is affecting us. And that bothered me. So I pitched a story to someone else. They didn't do anything with it. So that brought me back in because I was like, I'll do it myself because I was trying to keep people safe.
Okay, I want to pause there. So you pitched the story about how COVID-19 was affecting Black people in Iowa.
Absolutely.
And they said no?
Yeah, it was to an outfit that is out of state, so I'll say that much.
Okay.
They just didn't do anything with it. They didn't respond back. So I took it upon myself to just go ahead and start something. I studied a platform, boom, next thing you know, I'm publishing. But at the same time, what was happening was I was working for an insurance company in downtown Des Moines and working remotely, right? And the CEO of that company, when George Floyd was murdered, he puts out an email. So I'm reading this email to see what's he going to say. Because you saw all those companies promise things and nobody delivered.
We'll stand with you. We've got a Black Lives Matter sign in our window.
Yes,
We've got an equity group or whatever, all those things.
Right. So I'm waiting to see what is he going to say, And in that email, it said all people matter, which we know that what that means. We know that's the opposite of Black Lives Matter. We know that's what people say when they feel they can't say Black Lives Matter. I was angry, I was hurt, and I vowed at that moment I couldn't work for that company. And it was just the perfect timing because I had just started Black Iowa News and was kind of working on it part-time, and then boom, I'm in covering the protest movement, and it's just growing kind of organically. Okay.
This is huge to me because I've heard you speak in different interviews and media about this situation, leaving your job. But it's really hitting me right now that we're having this one-on-one, and you're saying that although you were doing this on the side and probably in a different format at that time, your job, your employer put out the email that said all people matter, and that was like the straw that broke the camel's back, and you quit that job.
Quit. I contemplated it for a few days, cried on my husband's shoulder, and then I was like, no, I know I can't go back here.
Wow.
I know I'm not. So I didn't even ever really, from that point, look for another job because I think that was the realization that I was supposed to be doing Black Iowa News, and I was going to make it work, and I was just going to do my best to help keep people safe, give them the appropriate information, accurate information, and find the numbers that I couldn't find that I wasn't seeing in TV news and printed news. So, yeah, it was just really about protecting us.
I feel like the fact that you quit your job is enough to let me know and should let our listeners know that you are about it. You are a trusted source of information, and I appreciate that. Thank you for sacrificing for us. I mean, I feel like that's some heroic shit. Thank you.
Trust me, it's not the first job I quit.
Wow.
And working for myself is the best, but I have values, I have integrity, and I'm not going to compromise them for anyone.
So what do you say to people who may tell you that the newspaper business is going out of style? Everything's digital now. There's an app for that, or there's internet resources. What do you say? Because this is a newspaper. It's a really awesome newspaper, and admittedly, I like paper. So I will print something out anyway to read it if it's online, but this is an actual newspaper. What do you say to those people who are like, no, that's old school?
Well, what I always say to people when they say things like that is, that was them and that was then. Right now, at this point in time, we need accurate information, we need credible information, and we need to fight some of the disinformation that's out there. We need to fight these attempts to erase us. So if I can put a printed product in the hands of 10,000 Iowans, in Black communities, at the community centers, at the churches, at the grocery store, wherever, I feel like that is just seeds being planted of goodness.
Yeah, I agree with that. Full disclosure, Sankofa Literary and Empowerment Group is a proud place where you can pick up copies of Black Iowa News. And they are located all around Mainframe Studios in downtown Des Moines, as well as particularly on the third floor at our free book table. So there's plenty of places around the state, though, where people can pick up the newspaper. How many locations are you in right now?
Yeah, last time I counted, it was 86.
Whoa.
And 24 cities.
24 cities.
And growing.
Oh, my gosh. Okay. Applause. That's amazing. Congratulations on that. Yeah. I'm sitting here thinking about the importance of local media. So I was watching, I think it was one of the morning shows, one of the national morning shows, and they were talking about the war that is going on right now between Israel and Hamas. And they had a correspondent in Israel reporting to the best of her ability, but they could not get no media, no outside media is allowed into Gaza right now. So they're relying on local press inside Gaza to report out, and then the big national stations are carrying it out to the world. So when I saw that, I was like, gosh, that's why we need Black Iowa News. We need people right here in our community who are who have their finger on the pulse of the community and can report out what's happening in the case that, God forbid, something goes down and no one can come in. So can you talk a little bit about why local media is so important? I know I just laid that example out there, but coming from an expert.
Yeah, absolutely. Local media is so important. And if it wasn't important, then you wouldn't have so many crying when all these newspapers are folding and all these media companies are going, they're toast. I think having our perspective centered is the number one key thing. I've worked at a big daily newspaper where the reporters have to be told, oh, when you go out, put a person of color in the story, or make sure you talk to a person of color, because it wasn't happening organically. Mm-hmm. And so with Black Iowa News, right away, I made the decision that our voices are the priority. And so in my stories, I go above and beyond to seek out Black experts, to seek out Black sources, to make sure that Black people are photographed. I want to make Black Iowa News as Black as possible. Like, I want you to open it up. And
it is very Black.
It is. I want you to see us everywhere. And not only see us, because that's just the surface level. Yeah. When you read these stories, when you dig into them, that's Black people talking. It's a Black woman interviewing all these other Black people across the state in a way that I feel no one has really done it. And getting their voices out there, because it's going to do double duty. It's going to empower other people to see this. It's going to motivate them. And then also, particularly for Black kids, it's going to let them know that there are, despite these incorrect, negative, purposely negative messages about Black people that we see all the time, it's going to counter that. They're going to see that we're doing great things. We're capable of untold greatness, as we always have been. from the beginning of time, and it's happening right here in Iowa. So if you live here and your family's always lived here, there are plenty of things that we've done to be proud of. There's plenty of people in this newspaper that you'll see and read about that are just doing wonderful things. But at the same time, we have to be real. It's not, Black Iowa News is not just some feature publication. It's not puff pieces.
Right.
You know, I go hard when I need to go hard about the things that are happening to us, like this Black maternal mortality rate and how awful it is and what a disgrace it is and what a source of shame it should be for this state that Black women are dying at 6 times the rate of white women in childbirth. Like, that is
6 times the rate?
6. And it's likely, very likely higher than that because the state committee that looks into it is meeting because the numbers are creeping up, but they haven't released their latest report. So it could be even higher. I mean, it's a disgrace. And the researchers are all like, these are preventable deaths. They should not be happening in a high-income country that we're living in. Mm-hmm. It shouldn't be happening.
And I know, Iowa is largely a rural state. However, Des Moines is a wealthy city.
Exactly.
So why is this happening? In your investigation and your research and all the interviews, because it's on the front page of the fall issue, that Black women are suffering in maternity care. We're endangered. I mean, that's some language. That is some language. What did you discover? Why is this happening?
It's happening for the reason that you would suspect. It's racism. It's doctors ignoring Black women's voices. It's nurses. It's this idea that we're second-class citizens. It's this idea that we don't experience pain the way other people experience pain. It's an epidemic is what it is. And I love that you have so many dope Black women who got to the point, much like I did with news. Yeah. They got to that point with the doulas and said, hey, we have to save ourselves because this talking about a problem, and Iowa really suffers from this. They know what the disparities are. They talk about them year to year, and they're the same as they were 25 years ago. Like, when you look at incarceration rates and things like that, nothing's changing. So how long are we just going to sit and talk about something? When are we going to move to the action stage? When are we really going to make a dent in these numbers? And these Black doulas, the Iowa Black Doula Collective said, hey, we're going to organize, train, empower women, and we're going to save ourselves, and we're going to save other Black women.
Incredible.
I love it.
Yeah, I love it too. That's what it takes for all of us in whatever system we're operating is to take control and save ourselves. I love this question in a sad way. On the front page, you were talking to or interviewing Ebony Bailey, who is the executive director of the Iowa Black Doula Collective. She asked 3 questions that have really stayed with me since I got my issue. She says, what will it take? How many lives will we have to lose? How long will we have to beg to be heard and treated as a whole human?
That's it.
That is it. That is so incredibly sad. I want to shift gears a little bit, and ask about all-in grocers in Waterloo. So for the last maybe 3 episodes of Black and Privileged in America podcast, I've held up copies of Black Iowa News and talked about different stories that you have published, and one of them was All-In Grocers. So were you in Waterloo for the opening? How was it? What's the vibe? Are the people excited?
I was not there for the opening,
okay.
but I watched on all the Facebook videos, and it looked like a thing of beauty. But I have been there since then.
Okay.
And so, walking up to this store, like driving up, it's just bright and welcoming and clean and beautiful.
Wow.
Like, you walk right in, and the first thing you're seeing is all of the produce. And you think about like other stores where you come in, like that's a priority to them that, they're, that they have these, nutritious offerings.
Yeah, not the processed sugar and all of the unhealthy stuff up front, but they have produce.
Yep, right there. And then you've got the restaurant there, and it's just a beautiful facility, but we know that what it takes to start something like that, to have something that's Black owned, like all the pieces that they had to put together to make this happen. That community really is all in to making it successful. And we know how hard it is to sustain that. I mean, Des Moines tried to have, a Black grocery store, and we see that tanked and, is nothing remotely close to what it used to be. It went defunct. And so it is an amazing accomplishment. And again, like every time that we're able to, by our actions collectively to solve problems for us, this is like a shining example of that. This community is saying, you know what, we need nutritious foods. We need to support our own, and that's what they're doing. And I really believe it's like a model that could be replicated other places. I
agree. I mean, this community, this particular Black community in Waterloo, who has the highest population of Black people per capita in the state, hasn't had their own grocery store for 50 years. That is sad. And it's all over. That's a problem all over. So the fact that some people said we got to save ourselves, yeah, that's certainly a model. Absolutely. So what was your favorite, favorite? Maybe that's a bad choice of words. But I'm going to ask you to pick a favorite story that's in this current issue. Maybe I should not ask you that. That might be too hard.
It is hard, but the whole series, I think, the whole Endangered series, I worked on it for several months. There, I interviewed 24 people, took, dozens of photographs, interviewed national researchers, poured through all this data. And when I was writing it, I read so many other stories that were devoid of the heart of the matter. So they were very just bland and just very like, here's the sad facts.
But they didn't point to racism. Is that what you're saying?
No, they might have pointed to racism, but it was like they were in and out. Like, well, we know this is a problem and we need to work on it. And then the story was over. One of the things that Abena told me at the onset, I asked her, what does she think about some of the stories she had read? And she mentioned that essentially, like, Black women's pain is always laid out, but there's never any solutions. Right. And that stuck with me from the beginning. So the whole 3-part series, I focused on uplifting possible solutions. So the doulas, these changes that need to happen in Medicaid, changes that need to happen with how doulas are paid, the expansion of doulas. I try to uplift that in all 3 of the stories. So it's my favorite story because, number one, I got to lay it out. I lay out the newspaper, so it's not just I write the story and somebody else puts it on the page. Yeah. I'm thinking about the presentation and how to help the reader move from point A to point B so that they can really digest and see what a terrible problem this is and that we need to do something about it. So that was my favorite.
I mean, you laid it out beautifully, speaking of layout, because not only is it front page, but there are multiple different entry points to the conversation throughout the paper. So you're talking about the crisis and then the solutions. And then you give us examples. You give us anecdotal stories. You give us so much information. I feel like as a result of this publication, this particular work that you've done here, and it is work. This is work. You put in the hours. Like, clearly, I wanted to just sit and count how many pages.
Yeah, I had to do 4 extra pages on this newspaper just to get everything in.
It's massive. I think someone should step forward and say, hey, we are going to lift doulas, or maybe I need to do a show on doulas.
Oh, absolutely, you do.
Yeah,
because there's some beautiful people, and what the work they're doing is just so important. I feel like now we need a doula for everything. So, like when I'm dealing with, a store not wanting to give me my money back, I need to just have a doula for that. I need to have a doula for everything because I just love this idea of people taking care of each other, people helping each other and sharing their knowledge, because we as a people, we have so much knowledge and we just need to share it. And we need to come together.
I would agree with you. And I would suggest that you are like an information doula. You a Black people doula.
Like that.
I read on social media a story that you talked about at the post office, an incident with a woman at the post office where you had to intervene in order to keep her safe and to mitigate what could have been a really terrible situation. And if you want to go into it, you can, but I want to lead to another question. Can you talk about your role not only as a publisher, but as, I mean, the more notoriety you get for doing this work, I feel like you're a living example of evolution. And I don't know if I didn't even prepare this question right. The way I have it written is just not going to do it. But I feel like you are a living version of your newspaper. The newspaper is an extension of you. I'll put it that way, in the fact that you are a doula to Black people. As far as the information we receive and combating misinformation that we're so inundated with, you come with the truth, you come with the real, and then you embody that in your persona, and I really feel strongly about that. And I thank you for that. So as you gain notoriety and attention and the readership grows, subscriptions grow, all of that grows, what is your hope for Black Iowa News and for yourself?
Oh, my. So my hope is to just do what I've done from the beginning with this, is to stay in my lane and try to do the best that I can do in that lane. And I know clearly what my lane is, and that's Black Iowa. I know clearly the people that I serve and the people I'm trying to help, and that's Black Iowans. And I don't really let anything deter me from that. I've had a lot of support really across the state with doing this newspaper, with going against the grain, with the industry that says, oh, newspapers in decline. Well, they may be in decline some places, but not here in Iowa. People want the newspaper. Subscriptions are growing. I've had people cry when I've handed it to them.
Yeah.
I've had people clutch it to their chest. And even young people, the stats say, well, young people don't, they don't read the newspapers. That's not their thing. Everything's digital. But Black Iowa News is also digital, and that's how I started. But I've had a young Black girl at a park event come up and grab that newspaper. And I said, oh, are you taking that to your grandma or your mom or someone? She's like, no, this is for me.
Yes.
And she ran off. And I was like, oh, I love you, little girl. I don't even know who you are, but I just love you. So that's the seeds being planted. Somebody's reading this, somebody's looking at this, and somebody's thinking, you know what? I can do this dream that I have too. Because this has always been a dream, but the conditions conspired to make it a reality. And then I just ran with it, and God cleared, if I had an obstacle, God just cleared it out of the way. But also I think that I was just so determined, and still am, just determined to make it work. I will do what I have to do to make sure that it survives, to make sure that we have something of high quality that's representing us.
Yeah.
Something that a lot of communities across Iowa, they've lost their newspapers. They don't have that. So at the same time, we're in this environment doing what the Black press has always done, which is we've got to pivot, we've got to innovate, and we've got to figure out ways to keep going, because we're in dire times when you look at what's happening legislatively, when you look at what's happening across the country, when you look at what's happening in terms of resources. These are like dire times. This is not a happy time, to be. And so we need information. We need really people to kind of coalesce together and think about how can we fight what the legislature is going to do next. Because these things that they've done that have tried to quell diversity, equity, and inclusion, those aren't beneficial to us, and they can't stand up there and lie and say it is. It's not beneficial to have our environment be one where equity is a bad word.
Yeah, it's a bad word. It's almost as bad as saying the M word, apparently. I don't know.
Right? They want to make it
they want to make it that way.
But it isn't, but we have to fight at the same time. We cannot just accept these things that are happening. And that's one thing I love about Black people that I've discovered in doing Black Iowa News, is that regardless of what's happening, you can best believe somebody in the Black community is working on a strategy. They're just doing the work. Yeah. And so that's what I've mirrored that, I think, with Black Iowa News, is to just do the work and to forge a path forward, regardless of what's happening. And that's what our people did that came before us.
Absolutely.
They kept going, and that's why we're here. So we have to keep going so that these kids have a decent place to live if they're going to be in this state, and we have to make it decent.
Wow. It's up to us.
It is.
Man, okay, before we go, I want to ask you about elections.
Okay.
This is election season. We're talking about school board, city council. So locally in Des Moines, that's where we're based here. School board, is anybody standing out for you?
You know, the thing is, I feel it's really important to not endorse anyone, but to uplift the Black candidates.
I love it. Okay, so Black Iowa News is not endorsing any particular candidates.
No, and this is a whole long other conversation we can have another day. But there's this thought now that newspapers shouldn't be in, media companies shouldn't be in the business of endorsing candidates. Our goal, our role as journalists is to put the credible, accurate information before people and let them make the decision. So the stories that I've written about the Black candidates here, that's what those stories do. They tell you what the platform is. They let you know how to vote, when to vote, and they uplift really some of the challenges that Black candidates have. Because as you can imagine, living in Iowa, there's a challenge that these candidates have that other candidates don't have. Fundraising, community support, even safety. That was a big thing that came up in the story that I have out right now, is that some of the suburban Black candidates don't feel safe door knocking in their communities. They have to take someone with them. And why is that? Because they're Black.
Wow.
And they're knocking on unknown people's doors, and you don't know, are you going to get that Karen? Are you going to get someone that wants to verbally attack you or even physically attack you? Like, our safety as Black people is always in question. It's always at the will of the crowd. So, you know, that's one thing that you don't hear mainstream newspapers talking about, what Black candidates have to do just to get their message out.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I just think it's an indictment on us as a people, Iowans, but it's really a sad thing that these candidates have to deal with that.
I mean, I guess for me, yeah, I'm so used to my safety being in question that it's just the way it is. So in terms of thinking about a Black person running for public office and doing the traditional campaign things, going door to door, going to town halls and forums and speaking with people, yeah, that's huge. That is absolutely a concern. Thank you for bringing that up and raising that. There are a number of Black people that are running for school board in Des Moines, for Des Moines Public School Board, a number of Black people who are running in our city council elections. What other interesting patterns or things have you noticed about this campaign cycle as opposed to others in the past?
Well, I think one interesting thing that I noticed recently is that one of a Black candidate for city council, his criminal background is being uplifted by a different media outlet. And I really have an issue with that in terms of the fact that, you know, number one, if you're going to bring up someone's criminal background, and it may not even be relevant to the position that they have, you need to bring up all of the candidates. You need to dig into all of their backgrounds if we're going to be fair about this. But the bigger thing is, when you live in a state that over-incarcerates Black men, that targets them on the road, over-arrests them, you know,
underemploys them,
and then starves neighborhoods and communities of resources. But then you're going to, on the other hand, criminalize them again when we're looking at their backgrounds. So I just, in some ways, I don't feel that is necessarily fair. Now, depending on what the crime is, yeah, we can talk about the relevance of it, but there's just this lack of fairness. It's glaring when you look at the media coverage. Yeah. So, I mean, that's one thing that I've noticed too, I guess, in this particular race is this kind of looking at people's backgrounds but not doing it across the board. And why are we doing this now when you've already interviewed this person before? Like, it's an issue.
I thank God for Black Iowa News because it is an issue. This lack of equity and just being really bogus. These other outlets have that tendency. But at the same time, I'm grateful that we have you and Black Iowa News and your team. I know you're growing in all kinds of ways. So pats on your back for that. Any parting commentary or remarks for our listeners? Anything you want them to know? How can they find you? How can they subscribe? That sort of thing.
Yes, first I just want to say thank you very much to everyone who has picked up the paper, who has read Black Iowa News online, who's ever supported me, who's supported the concept of this because it's so important. Just know that I appreciate all of your, emails and comments. You can go to blackiowanews.com to find the website, which is always being updated pretty much almost every day. The newspaper right now is quarterly, but I do have plans to expand that.
Yay!
Future plans to expand it. If you want the Black Iowa News newspaper mailed to you, the subscription cost is $39 and for 4 issues. And if you want a digital link, it's $29. And so I'm having a lot of fun taking the newspaper around the state every time. So I think we usually go to like 8, 9, 10 cities to drop it off and mailing all the time. But it's just a labor of love. It's an act of love. It's using any talents or gifts that God gave me on behalf of us and being able to do it our way and not deal with some of these things that other mainstream media does. So we're controlling the narrative from how the newspaper looks to being able to put a dark-skinned Black woman's pregnant belly on the front page of our own newspaper. I love it.
It's beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, that's so important. And if I work for some other outlets, that just wouldn't been done. But because I can, I'm controlling it, I'm creating it, I'm growing it for us, we can do what we want to do with it. And we can tell our message in the way that it needs to be told. And we can uplift our voices where we're the main story. We're not just the little, let's get a Black person and toss her into the story, and we call that, like we did something. We're the whole entire story. We're the whole entire paper, and it's only going to get better. And so I also challenge people to just dismiss the narratives that say, our print is dead and, why do you have to have Black Iowa News? Because I hear that. We have to have it because we don't have. And we have all this talent and we can create things ourselves. So we don't have to wait for anybody to put us on. We can put ourselves on. And that's what I do in my lovely job now.
I love it. Listen, Black Iowa News, get it, support it, subscribe. Whether it's in print or online, I prefer in print, and I get it online too. But I prefer the paper in my hand so that I can turn the page and smell the pages in the ink. I'm old school like that, but it's not just old school. This is real. It makes it real. And it's so beautiful. Like Dana says, it is for us, it centers us, and it's only going to get better. I'm so happy that you came through Black and Privileged today. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have a book, and we always ask our guests for a book recommendation. So what do you got?
So the book I have is Jody Armour's Nigga Theory.
Ooh.
He's a professor out of L.A.
May I?
Yes, absolutely. And I wrote a story, and he was quoted in this story, and his quotes were just so deep. I had never heard anyone speaking this way. And so I got his book, but I'm only in the first part of it because, when all of these things happen, when another Black man gets killed by police or some other inequity happens in the news, it just conspires where you're thinking about all these injustices that we experience. So when I started reading it at first, it just almost broke my heart to read some of his words. But it's so, so good. You have to get this book and read it.
Yeah, I'm absolutely going to get the book.
Yeah, I love it.
All right. Nigga Theory by Jody Armour. Thank you, Dana.
You are welcome.
Ah, this has been the best. I am so full. Thank you all for joining us on this episode of Black and Privileged in America podcast, presented by AmplifiedDSM.com. We have talked with Dana James, the founder and publisher of Black Iowa News, a Black-centered newspaper for Iowa, the entire state. So she delivers the paper on a quarterly basis all across the state. It's available in print and online. So we will have all of the information for you in our show notes in order for you to connect with Black Iowa News. It is a must-have. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.
This podcast is brought to you by Infinite Resources, a local staffing agency connecting diverse job candidates and central Iowa companies.